Anglo-Saxon period, roughly the time from when Rome withdrew from Britain to the time when the Normans conquered England, is in many ways, particularly in the first half, a proto-historic time period. What does this mean? It means that while people around them kept a lot of written records, they themselves did not. The Anglo-Saxons did have their own writing system, variants of Futhark or Futhork or whatever you wish to call it. Most people would recognize this script as Viking runes. Like the Anglo-Saxons, the early medieval Scandinavians were also the descendants of Germanic tribes, and they shared variants of this same writing system. Futhark is characterized by straight lines, ideal for scratching or carving into stone or wood. Now this is great in one respect, because words carved into stone can last a long time and survive to be discovered by modern archaeologists. On the other hand, it is very labor-intensive. So you are not going to be carving long histories or stories into these rocks. Memorials, landmarkers, and a few bits of graffiti, that's mainly what we have using this script. We do find runes carved into little pieces of wood so they could be passed around like notes, kind of like early medieval text messages. But again, they are generally very short and to the point. Futhark is not a script intended for long-form use. The vast majority of written records we have from the Anglo-Saxon period come from priests and monks, and they were writing using the Latin script written on vellum or parchment. Now this gets into a gray area because the Anglo-Saxons converted to Christianity fairly quickly. And so after the first 100 years or so, a lot of the priests and monks who were writing things down about the Anglo-Saxons were themselves Anglo-Saxons. But because a lot of them entered monasteries at a very young age, you have the problem of representative samples, misunderstandings, and possible bias. Like, has someone who has lived in a monastery since age 8 and never experienced combat going to know accurate information about shield wall formations? Maybe, but maybe not. It's a situation similar to Snorri Sturluson in that we are very happy to have them. All writing produced in England and the surrounding regions is valuable to our understanding of the time period. All the same, there are things in the writings that are heavily debated amongst scholars, and some things that are just missing. Even when we get toward the end of the Anglo-Saxon period in the 11th century, there are still a lot of things we just don't know because they weren't written down. Like hand fasting. There is this record of Harold Godwinson having a hand fasting with his first wife, Edith Swanneck, which was called Marriage in the Danish Way. And that's all we have. We don't actually know what hand fasting in the Anglo-Saxon period entailed. It might have involved tying the couple's hands together. It could just as easily be a reference to the traditional handshake that accompanied all contractual agreements among Germanic peoples. And I know the wedding industrial complex has lied to you about Viking weddings and spread misinformation in an effort to sell you things, but you should know the wedding industry has no scruples and sits on a throne of lies. My mother used to be a wedding planner. Back to the Anglo-Saxons. There is a lot we do know. There are a lot of law codes and charters that have survived and tell us about what societal issues they were dealing with and how they tried to deal with them. Anglo-Saxon laws gave women the right to own property and hold property separate from their husbands. They also gave legal protections to children, including orphans. We know from royal charters who was given land, who was at court, and who was reasonably in favor with the king. These books by Bernard Cornwell are set starting in the reign of King Alfred the Great. There is a character named Osferth who is introduced in book 4, I think. Osferth was a real person, but we only know he existed because of one line in one charter, where it lists someone named Osferth, who is brother to King Edward, son of Alfred the Great. Alfred's wife did not have a son named Osferth. So Osferth seems to have been an extramarital child. All this to say, we know a lot about the Anglo-Saxons. We know enough to know that their sensibilities, cultural values, and taken for granted assumptions were fundamentally different from ours, and even from the people of the High and Late Middle Ages. This is a big reason why I find them such a rich source of inspiration for my Wrath and Weeping series. Their world is just alien enough that it feels like the setting for a fantasy book. There are just enough details to create a framework, and I can creatively fill in the blank spaces. But this also means that I run into a lot of questions that can't be definitively answered. Like, there are a lot of daily life questions that are really hard to answer or have multiple possible answers. Such as, did they shear their sheep or did they rue their sheep? Book 2 in my Anglo-Saxon and Viking-inspired fantasy romance series, Oath of the Wolf, releases to the general public on Tuesday, October 21st.